Welcome to the Commercial Edge podcast with me, Chris Webber. Come and enjoy a virtual coffee while I share my experience and ideas that could help you overcome difficult people at work. I share my thinking and insights so that you can find new ways to overcome challenges and gain a commercial edge and unleash the power of people. On today's podcast, I'm going to be discussing buyers who won't make a decision. I'm going to start to explore why don't they make a decision and what can you do about it? We're going to cover a number of things. We're going to talk about why they can't decide, the conspiracy theories that go in our heads and get in the way, hidden barriers to the agreement, things that we don't think about. We're going to explore something called the motivation scale and what I refer to as the meh space. And we're going to share some tips on how to solve the problem. So let's do it. So why can't people decide? What is the problem that means that you people can't make a decision? I'm going to give you an example that I spent 2022 working with a client in different markets around the world, and our program was to create shared strategies, shared solutions to shared problems. They were working with their one of their biggest customers, and we worked through a project planning process. And on one occasion, I went to Germany, and we ran a workshop that involved a number of steps. We shared information, talked about the problems that each party saw in the current marketplace, in the current situation. We then started to work up what the issues were and how we might solve those solutions. We had a wonderful mix of people. We had some very senior people in the room. We had some really cool operational people, some great people from marketing, from sales, from commercial. Really good cross section. And during that afternoon, we came up with a whole range of solutions with a lot of motivation behind them. Real progress in partnership, real trust building between the two organizations. And it was so good that at the end of the afternoon, one of their senior people had to leave a little bit early. He sent a message back to the room to say, we absolutely need to include this one product in our portfolio. Let's work on it. He was so inspired. Well, it's a nailed on solution, isn't it? Except that 2025, that product still isn't in the portfolio. So, why? What's gone wrong here? What's the problem? Why is it that something that's just their idea doesn't actually happen? Things we start to think about are the conspiracy theories. So we start to think about, well, perhaps it's the competition. So they wanted to buy from us, the competition have gone in and they've created leverage. They've made threats, they've made promises, they've done something. It's the competition that have changed everything, and they're the ones that have caused a problem. And if only they hadn't got involved, the deal would have definitely been ours. And I know that that's the case when I work with people who are perhaps selling a product through a sales process. There might be a tender process that procurement are leading, and there's a feeling that this, regardless of how much progress you've made, there's always another person in the process, or there might be an incumbent who's already involved. And so there's a sense that, we've lost out to the competition. They've done something different. People often say they're only there because it's a price comparison. They just wanted our proposal because then they could look through our report and then make a decision based upon what they see. Perhaps you worry you didn't do a good job. We all have those voices inside our head that says, well, we did that presentation, we did the proposal, perhaps I didn't do as good a job as I would have liked to have done. And that's the problem. That's what's gone wrong here. Whatever the case, it's all inside our own heads. And what I want you to do is to reflect on other things that might be more realistic barriers. Now, not to say that competition is involved, not to say that price doesn't matter, But if it's their idea, if they seem really motivated, if they understand the context and then still don't make a decision, maybe there's something else that's happening here. Perhaps there are some hidden barriers to this agreement, things that you don't necessarily think about. One of the most obvious ones is a lack of empowerment. We could be dealing with customers who are sent out to seek an opportunity, to talk to you, to talk to other people in the marketplace, but they're not really empowered to make that decision. And I think the world where buyers could make an absolute decision has completely gone. The organizations that I work with, whether they're small organizations or big organizations, have a network of people who are involved in decision making. That takes time. So, that in itself isn't enough, that it just takes time to get through. So, there could be a problem that it's just delay, that it's taking time to go through that, takes complexity. But you're also relying on your customer to drive that process. Now, I know there are many sales processes that involve us engaging with different stakeholders across their business, and they're absolutely right. Understanding the power brokers, the barriers, the different people involved in the decision making is absolutely the right thing to do. And I highly encourage you to plan that out and start to understand what's going on there. But you also need to recognize that it's not just because you have a customer who's really interested, the network could get in the way. But what is the network thinking about? That's what I want to explore a little bit more. Because it's not quite as straightforward as I need to influence finance to get their approval. And that comes from creating a document that lays out the return on investment. Or I need to think about operations and how they will receive delivery or install this product. What they're really thinking about is choices and substitutions. Going back to the example that I shared in Germany, when we started to unpick the problem, both sides were having to make a substitution. The customer was saying, we want this product, but it's going to replace something that we already have. What are we going to replace? And my client recognized that this was going to happen. And they started to have doubts because they started to worry about what it might substitute. And a lot of discussion was then opened up about what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. So they were then thinking about, well, I need to recognize what am I going to gain and what am I going to lose? If I've got a group of customers who want to buy this product, will they buy this alternative? If I do buy this alternative, does it deliver me the same margin? What's the impact on my brand? There were so many layers to this substitution that is where people got stuck on both sides. And it wasn't intention. It was just this question of what what's the impact on what we're currently doing right now? I'm going to revisit this in a few minutes and talk about how this becomes really complicated. But when you're selling in something new, you're bringing something into their organization that they either don't have. And the question you're asking is, does this replace something that's then right now? And if it does, they are going to want to understand what that effect is. It's not as simple as just saying, yes, just let's go with it. There are implications, and other people around their organization want to explore those. It might not just be around the product. It could be an effect on systems, how they do business currently. IT software is a great example of this. You bring in a new piece of IT, and therefore, what you used to do and the process used to manage something now has to change. That creates waves through their business of change, which will require maybe retraining people, will require new systems and standard operating procedures, whole range of impacts and effects because you're changing something. And people get comfortable the way things are, even if what you're bringing in makes it faster and easier for them to do something. Everyone has already adapted to dealing with the problem that exists right now. So the way that they operate right now might be to take into account some complexity. That's normal. Even to speed it up requires them to do something a little different, another step in the process or a shortening of the process, which just takes a bit of confusion. Just, and the bigger the span of that, the more careful they're going to be. I'll give you an example. I remember quite a few years ago working with a client in oncology. They were selling medicines for oncology, and they were competing with a product which had previously been given through an injection, through an infusion. Patients had to go into the hospital for the day. They were connected to some pumps, and they sat there while the medicine was infused into them during the session. That would take several hours to happen, and there were groups of patients around all having their treatment together. The new solution was a tablet. People could go to their hospital, collect their tablets, and then just be at home, take their tablets. Wow. That is a huge transformation. I don't think anybody could argue that it's a simpler system, it's a more preferred system for patients, it's going to be cheaper for the health system. But the hospitals, didn't want to make this decision because they used that time that they had with the patients for other things. First of all, they had to justify an infusion suite. They had this infusion suite in the hospital, and it did more than just that particular drug. But by taking out those patients, it started to make the return on investment and the justification for that less strong. That created a worry for the impact on other things where there was no tablet alternative. They also spent time with those people. While they were having that infusion, nurses could go and talk to them, have a conversation with them, ask how they are. The patient could talk to the other people around them too. They also got some support and some value from the fact that they were connecting with other people experiencing the same problem. The alternative was to be at home, alone, suffering. So the choice of whether this product was better was way more complicated than the return on investment and the costs. There was a significant other layers that had to be included, that had to be considered, and previously weren't considered. So when you're thinking about why your buyer doesn't want to make a decision, perhaps as they go through the process of endorsing this product, this purchase, there are things coming through that they hadn't considered when they first set out on this journey. And that's a very important factor. You need to support them because these are genuinely hidden barriers to the agreement. They want to find something which saves them time. They want to find something that saves them money. They want to help hit their own targets. They want to be more effective. But there is costs, and some of those costs they may not have understood at the start. And therefore, sending in a proposal or giving them a presentation and not working through the details is going to cause some problems for you. And I want to just explore something called the motivation scale. When we make decisions, they are either towards motivations or away from motivations. towards motivation is something I want to improve, something I want to achieve. It's my goals, it's my objectives, it's my targets, it's improved efficiency, it's cost savings. Away from motivations are fears, worries, problems. By not changing, we are risking something. Now, it could be that we are wasting a lot of time, and therefore we want to move towards saving time, and wasting time is costing us too much. And I think as you think of something like artificial intelligence, it fits into this. Some people are considering the role of AI in their business because it will help them do things faster, differentiate from the competition, be more efficient. Some people are doing it because they will lose ground if they don't. They're bringing it in because, oh God, well, we have to now because otherwise we're going to be behind. So, great example of towards motivation and away from motivation. And the reason I bring this out is that you can you can use this to understand why your customer wants to make this decision. So, what are they looking for? Is it improve something towards, or is it away from as a problem? But you need to build a much broader picture in the way that you present your solution. There was a client I had years ago, and they had quite a long sales process. They sold software, and their buying process was going to take about 12 months. They were dealing with very large, complex organizations, affecting lots of people and across over lots of systems. And so they knew at the outset that they were going to have to take time to make this decision. The trigger that they were using to start the buying process was a short term problem. Something like terrible weather affects the demand for your products, and therefore, um, if terrible weather happens, you need to do something about it. You need to protect yourself. Snow, for example. So they would do this in terms of their advertising campaigns, and it would create contact. People would get in touch. So we would see some snow happening, the roads would be closed, there would be problems, and it would affect the demand for their target customer, their target audience, and they would receive calls saying, "Hey, we're interested in your product." But that was a short-term problem. And what would happen is during the buying process, people forget that fear, that worry that they had, that immediate sense of, oh my goodness, we've got to do something about this, dissipated. And therefore, the motive for why they might embark on this complex product just disappeared. So, what you need to create within your buying process is a short term motive. Why do you do this? Why do you need to do it now? A long term transformational change that organizations can feel is really driving significant value. And also something in the middle that they can see right now. Because as humans, we are terrible at thinking about the future. We live right now. And because we live right now, it changes. I think a great example is packing for a holiday. If you are packing to go for a summer holiday and it's winter, I know plenty of people who escape to warmer climates during December when it's dark and cold and wet. They take Christmas abroad, they take January abroad. It's quite hard to think about what I'm going to need because right now it's cold and wet and dark. I need a jacket, I need coats, I need boots, I need hats. But I'm flying to somewhere where it's going to be hot. Getting your head around that is quite difficult. We like to live in this moment. That's the same with buying decisions. If I'm buying something and the value of it is going to be discovered in 3, 4, 5 years, pretty hard to see what that's going to bring to me. But if I can see what it's going to bring to me now or in the next 12 months, that becomes a very different aspect. So from then on, it changes how we communicate. So I'm thinking about my long term goals, I'm thinking about my short to medium term goals, and I'm thinking about short term problems, all towards and away from motivation. By thinking about it in that way, you are going to communicate a much bigger, rounder picture to your customer and take away this reason for inaction. And the reason for inaction is what I call the meh space, right? We're moving towards some amazing goals, or we're moving away from some significant problems. In the middle is meh. It's, you know, it's not exciting enough that I really need to make significant changes, especially when I think about the complexity of the effect on other systems. When I think about the substitution risk, I'm taking something out, so I'm going to lose something. Is it really worth the hassle? Is the juice worth the squeeze? As what one of my colleagues says. It's the meh. It's like, it's not really worth dealing with. And I think a lot of the time where buyers don't make a decision is when it's in this space. It seemed like a good idea, but the company is cooled to it because the benefits are not really clear or the risks of not making change happen are not particularly fearful. And so it's easier just to stay where we are. We are risk averse. We don't like change for change's sake. We generally like things to stay as they are. And when change is coming and decisions are being made, if it doesn't seem exciting enough, that's where we're going to fall into this. And remember, people are busy. They are very much doing stuff. And the things that are going to float to the top of their to do list are the things that are problems right now or are going to be problems in the future or opportunities in the future that they're going to realize. And so the pressure that they're under is going to be distracted by, they're going to be distracted by the pressures that they're under right now. And that's a hard thing to understand. And and so, you feel like we're the most important thing in the world, but where there's always a context. And even if you were at that moment in time, when they called you, when they asked for it, things move on. And it's not quite the same. And things need to be adapted. So you need to think about the meh space. Are you sitting in the meh space? And if you are, how do you solve this problem? How do we solve a problem of buyers who can't make a decision or won't make a decision? Well, I like to think of an example, and I think the example that pops to mind is Greta Thunberg. I've read a book by Alistair Campbell, which was talking about, but what can I do? He was frustrated by politics when he wrote the book, by the fact that change wasn't happening, and that it can feel very frustrating to be involved in politics. And he wrote this book to inspire people to get involved in politics and to do something. And he pulled out Greta Thunberg as a great example. And I love it. I like the way he thinks in this context because what he was saying was she started out on her own. She sat on Parliament steps making a protest. From that seed, she has grown a global following of people who are passionate about bringing change, about making change happen. And she was dealing with inaction, what she saw as decades of people who just didn't do anything. And so there's the lesson in how. How did she start to inspire people to really act and act today? Well, it came from her passion and her absolute. She did not try to find a middle ground. She did not try to keep people happy. She did not try to tick boxes and say, well, what you're doing is fine. She challenged everything. What you are doing is not enough. It is going to fail. And she shifted their expectations because she said, I'm a young person, I will be infected, and my children will be infected, and you are stealing our futures because of your inaction. That was some of her strong messaging. And she made people focus on the towards and away from and deal with it right now. Uncompromising. We often try to be nice. We often try to empathize. And we don't want to be too dramatic in our communication. But that's the lesson from Greta Thunberg. She was. And yes, some people disagree with her. Some people disagree with the fact that we need to act now. But the people who do agree with her cannot now say it is not worth acting now. If you agree with her message that they have to do something, then you can't sit there and say, let's wait for a while, because you're then not agreeing with her. Be courageous. It is better to get somebody to disagree and say no than to have this world of, well, it's all gone quiet. And I don't understand why people sit in this space. Why do we like to sit with a maybe? Why is it that we feel like it's okay to have in our pipeline people who could be interested, but then nothing seems to happen? Well, maybe it's something to do with hope. Maybe we feel like it's better that we've got some positives to talk about than nothing. And especially when we're under pressure, it always comes back to what are our goals and hopes. And in sales, we're looking for the next sale. And it's often easier to say, oh, I've got things I'm working on, I've got projects I'm working on, oh, I haven't heard back from them, than to say they said no. But the honest answer is a no is so much better. When they say no to you, you get to understand why. You get to understand what is the barrier preventing this. Is it to do with the fact that the product isn't right? It doesn't solve the problem they have or won't deliver the results they want? Or is it to do with the way of implementation? So impacts on other products, impacts on systems and processes or complexity. Because when you know, you can work together to solve that problem, to find a way to help overcome the barriers and the issues that do exist. And so the summary of all of this is that you need to be involved much more. It's not good enough to deliver your proposal and expect people to make a decision. You've also got to be involved in how you're going to bring that to life and what the barriers are. And you need to do so in a very open and balanced way. You need to be realistic about what exists currently and how your product or service is going to affect their business, their systems, other things. Deal with the network and work patiently through the challenges that are raised as they go along. You need to be passionate and absolutist, fully committed to your cause, to the value that you're going to bring. You can't halfway this. My challenge with one of my customers with the situation in Germany was they seem to want a foot in both camps. We want the new product listed. We worry about losing the sales from the current product, so we're not sure of what to do. I was standing in a shop in the UK in London over the weekend looking at sports watches. Um, I love my sports watch and I was curious about what's happening, what are the new ones that are out there. Garmin have a Phoenix series. They have a Phoenix 5, they have a Phoenix 6, a Phoenix 7, a Phoenix 8. They're all on sale. Are they hedging their bets? Phoenix series to me is aimed at the same person, the same type of personality. But now they've had to think about different price points for evolving watches and communicating the value of each. If I'm standing in a shop talking to somebody, how do I know I want a Phoenix 6 versus a Phoenix 7? I don't know. I don't feel that they're really clear and absolutist. And my problem is that if I'm going to choose to buy a new sports watch, I want them to be passionate and clear about why it's better to change. I want them to commit to it and tell me that, yes, if you're going to do this, you need the latest Phoenix. They have other ranges where different price points, different types of customer, different types of consumer. Be clear and absolute. Be courageous in it. Tell people what are the problems that they have right now and be absolutist about it. Tell them what they are going to gain from this and be positive and clear. Get involved in the process and explore what the implications are. Where do these ripples go? And what do these people worry about? And help them to overcome it. Someone who is not making a decision is probably playing it safe. They feel like not doing anything is safer than doing something. How are you going to change that? Thanks for listening to the Commercial Edge podcast. I'll be back soon with another episode. Join me then when we delve into more difficult conversations. See you next time.